Hello and welcome to the Authentic Creative, expanding your capacity to feel good. And today I'm starting a few minutes before my guest comes on because I want to just share with you who she is and what she's meant to my life a few minutes before she gets here, and we'll see when she pops on. So let me just read to you guys. This is Cathy Heller that is coming on today. This won't actually air in September. This is going to air in December when her book is coming out. So, Cathy, if you have been listening to me, you'll have heard me say her name many, many, many times. I reference her all the time because she's been such an influence in my life, such a mentor to me. She's changed my life spiritually, mentally, emotionally. I don't know about physically, but maybe, like, who knows? I have just been such a super, super fan of hers for about 2 years. I listened to her podcast and I am in her courses. I've been to her retreats. I've been to her house. I just love her sister. I find her to be so incredibly, incredibly inspiring. So one of the many things that Cathy has taught me is truly knowing my worth and coming from wholeness. And this is what I've been stepping into, and it feels so good, right? And it's just a remembrance, right? So she talks about helping us remember to remember. And it's really that we already know, we already have so much awareness, so much consciousness, so much knowing. This is what I share with my students in like the Akashic Record readings and the mountain breathwork infused with Reiki classes. There's so much knowing that we already have, and it's really just remembering to remember. And that's what Cathy has done for me, is she has helped me to remember to remember. And one of the things she helps me remember to remember is to not take it so seriously, to have more fun, to be easeful, to let things go, to surrender. So one of Cathy's main things that she teaches is manifestation. And the other day when she was coaching me, she reminded me that manifesting equals surrender. And it's so poignant because, oh my goodness, all the magic and all the miracles are on the other side of the surrender, right? It's that grasping and that holding on and that focusing on what we don't have, the lack or the separation, that puts us in a place of not getting what we want, of getting more of what we don't want, right? And so Cathy just is a pointer. She talks about being a pointer, and she points us towards what we really need to remember, which is that we're already whole, we're already worthy, and we can just relax and have fun and let go, and that all of the, best experiences in our lives are when we just are easeful, when we're playful, when we're in the process, we're enjoying the process, and we're here for the process. So I am committed to continuing to bring the women I serve more of this remembrance. So I'll read to you Cathy's bio. Cathy Heller is a top ranked podcaster, truth seeker, 8-figure spiritual and business coach, and best-selling author focused on helping people create a life of abundance, joy, and purpose. Her popular podcast, Abundant Ever After, formerly Don't Keep Your Day Job, has over 40 million downloads and features conversations with successful authors, celebrities, and leaders like actors Matthew McConaughey and Jenna Fisher, Chelsea Clinton, spiritual leader Deepak Chopra, author Malcolm Gladwell, singer-songwriter Jason Mraz, and more. Oh my gosh, so she just had her 900th episode. So exciting. I was watching the reel of people congratulating her, Seth Godin congratulating her, and I was just crying because it was just so beautiful. So she's a phenomenal leader, and she's sparking a movement for every soul to add their gift to the world. So you can find her on Instagram at Cathy.Heller. So many things that I want to talk to Cathy about that I'm so excited about. And we're only going to talk for half an hour, so we'll see how much. But it's always interesting because you get what you need. It's like trying to figure out and strategize how you're going to have this conversation that is going to give you guys everything. And really, it's okay because all of it that she teaches is on her podcast anyway. So you can always go over to her podcast, Abundant Ever After, or get her book, and it's all there. So there's no pressure to get it into half an hour. It's all there for you. So many ways that Cathy and I intersect. And so one of the things I was chanting in front of my Buddhist altar before I popped on here, and I was crying. I've been crying this morning, just getting in touch with my heart. Like when we really surrender, I feel like what's there oftentimes is tears. And here she is. So I'm already talking about you. I've already read your bio because I just wanted to like get going. So once you're here, I can like jump right in with you.
I love it.
So I've been on calls this morning already with Cathy. I was crying all morning because there's something about the way that you speak and what you remind me of. Yeah, what you remind me of is just, it touches my heart so deeply. And I said to you at your Bloom retreat at the Ritz in Marina Del Rey, I was like, you're such a soul sister because the way that you talk, it just speaks to my heart, like everything you share about. And I was saying before you came on is like you just, like you always say, you're a pointer. And it's not that I don't know and that we don't know the people who are listening. All of the wisdom and all of the knowledge and all of the answers, we have it. We all have it. And it's just remembering to remember, like you say. And then we just forget. And then it's like you just continuously bring me back to my remembrance.
That's so
Oh,
sweet. I so receive it. I love the way that you are such a mirror for me, and I appreciate it. Thank you.
you're so welcome. So one of the things that I was doing before we hopped on here is I was chanting in front of my Buddhist altar. And so much of what you speak is like Jewish wisdom, right? But it's all the same because I hear everything you share about Jewish wisdom, and my dad's Jewish and my stepmom is Jewish, and I grew up Jewish, but like also Christian and also Buddhist. So it's like, but it's all, as you say, like
Beautiful.
these, it's all the same. Like I hear everything you share. I'm like, oh, that's so Buddhist. And like today you were talking about sitting under the tree at Disneyland and just letting things come to you and just letting it go and surrendering it. And I was like, oh, you're such a Buddha because when we get to the truth, like your bio says, like you're a truth seeker, like it's all the same. The truth is the truth.
Yeah. Um, my senior year of college, I was a world religion major. And I know that you know pieces of the story, so you might even know the
Yeah,
whole story, but I'll just share this because it's so on point.
please.
I wrote my senior paper comparing Moses and Siddhartha, who was the Buddha. And my professor, who I just had such a crush on, but he said, "Oh, this is so cool and nobody's done this. And I'm so curious to see what you're gonna find." And it was literally, they were mirror images of each other because both Moses and Siddhartha, who became the Buddha, both grew up in a palace. They both grew up with a tremendous amount of material wealth. And at some point, they both realized, it makes me like emotional, that there was nothing in the piles and piles of things that ultimately fulfilled them. And then they each on their own individual journeys, obviously these are thousands of miles apart, different years in history, but they both went into nature. And in being in the stillness of nature, they found their way back to what really felt like enlightenment. And then, of course, they both felt called in their own ways to lead people to what they call a middle path, right?
The
A
middle
path,
way.
yeah, the middle way, right? And so Moses, of course, goes back to Egypt and takes people out of this place that was so focused on the physical wealth and takes them into the desert to reconvene with the stillness. And Siddhartha, who was once this prince, is able to speak a language to people that they could actually hear from someone who was once very much in worldly possessions, right? And he was able to say there is something in between. And the greatest joy they both were able to impart was when we get into stillness, we find God. And you've heard this as well, but I'll just share this because it's such a beautiful thing that I learned.
Yeah.
It's in my book, which is that because I was so taken by these ideas, the same way that you are, Buddhism, Judaism, this wisdom. When I first went to Jerusalem, the very first class I ever took, which was not from Rabbi Aaron, who really became like a father to me, but another rabbi, David Zeller, who was a Buddhist Jewish person, who was also a psychologist and a rabbi,
Jubu.
a total guru. He shared that this guy is making noise. He shared that the word for Shabbat is used in the Torah many times, the Sabbath, right? And that he said the meaning of the word is always in how it is used the first time it's ever used, that's how we know what a word means from the context of the first time it's used. And he said, does anyone know the first time this word appears in the Torah, in the Bible? And nobody knew. And he showed everyone. He said, the first time it's used is when Abraham is meditating. And so the word Shabbat means to meditate. And he said, everybody takes the translation of it wrong and says it's a day of rest. But it's actually not the word you use for rest in Hebrew. The word for rest, to sleep, is a totally different word. In fact, there's several of them, which I can share. But the point, which is more to the point, is that the word Shabbat is not rest. It's stillness. And it's not stillness other than the kind of stillness we find in meditation. It means to meditate, which means that the whole point of having a Sabbath is to spend one day a week connected to the inner world. And he said, if you read the paragraph, it says, and Abraham had this meditation and instantly God appeared. And he said, when we all want to find our way back to the divine, if we simply find our way to this level of stillness within, every time God appears. And so how similar is that? And that is what really hooked me in. And I said, oh my gosh, this is my own tradition. Like, I grew up very disconnected and secular and not knowing any of it. And I was like, great, I need to be filled up with this wisdom.
It's so beautiful. I love how you're so steeped in these wisdom traditions, but then also you can completely geek out about science and psychology. And I'm like, how did you not do well in school when you were in grade school or high school or whatever? You talk about being a C student because you're such a geek in the best way.
Right. You're so smart. You know what? First of all, you've heard me say all of these things as we've spent a lot of time together, but I really feel like we need to unschool every person. Like, school is a whole thing. And I was really struggling in school because a lot of it felt really boring. I felt
Yeah,
like there wasn't a lot of room to dive in and discuss and take things apart and deconstruct things. It was more like memorization, and
right.
people telling you what to think, not how to think. And I think
Yes.
I like rebelled against that. And then I think when I went to college, I became, magna cum laude, and I became editor of my college paper because college was a playground in which I could discuss ideas and read really good books and choose my schedule. And I was enthralled in college with what I could study, whereas I didn't feel like there was anything that really lit me up, from K through 12th grade, except for maybe like one creative writing class that I had and one English class. But
Yeah.
yeah, and on top of it, I also, in the midst of, becoming an adolescent, my parents divorced and had a really messy and really painful divorce, which left me pretty much on my own in my mom's apartment, where she was like sometimes hospitalized and I was by myself. So that definitely wasn't conducive to showing up for classes or getting good grades. And I was
Yeah.
so truly so sad about life, that it was hard to really prioritize like a test and all of that. But yeah, I do love really geeking out on seeing how the science matches the spiritual. And when you can see truth in different lenses, it all feels very true. Because when you look at the way we're wired and how the fact that the way a human being is made, the fact that us going into a higher consciousness makes our biology have an upgrade. It tells you like, oh, that's the owner's manual. Like
Mm.
it tells you like, oh, clearly that's the guide. If the right fuel in the car is 89, use 89. If the right fuel is 91, use 91. Don't use 89, right? But we don't know.
Oh, I have put diesel in a car when I first went out to LA, and it was like not good.
Not good. I put all the wrong things. I'm like, what? Does it really matter? My husband's like, it's a turbo engine. You're going to kill it. I'm like, I didn't know that. He's like, what do you think? It's just like, you can choose what you want. I'm like, I don't know. And this one's less expensive. He's like, no. So we are made a certain way. And when you understand the science, and the science points you, like you said, you're a pointer, when the science also just points you right back to what is also in your greatest wisdom, what more proof do you need? Like, this is the way your cells know how to repair.
Mm.
So do you want to be healthy? Because that's one reason to do things that are higher consciousness. It will literally give you a biological upgrade. Would you like that? So yes, I love that the science is reflective of the spiritual world.
Okay, I want to ask you or tell you or share with you about your seventh grade self, because that I feel is like one of the core things that connects me to what you do, what you are, how you teach, the soul that you are is like, right? It's like our pain point. And my seventh grade version of myself, you talk about how we have like a wounded self and we have a wise self. My wounded self is the seventh grade girl. And I know that's yours too. And, you know, I remember having to go into the bathroom to eat lunch in the bathroom stall because I didn't want to sit by myself. And my dad had just left, and my best friend had just left, and my other best friend said she didn't want to be friends anymore.
Oh my God. Totally get that.
And so I'm just curious, like, what's your seventh grade story for those
Oh
who haven't
my
heard it?
God, very similar to yours. Very similar. In seventh grade, I did something really stupid, which was to stand out. I was in the talent show and I sang, I sang Gloria Stefan, Get on Your Feet.
Gloria Estefan was my first concert.
And I wore one of those shirts that had this was in the 90s, where like you would take a shirt and then put it through this like clip on the
Yeah,
side.
yeah.
What on earth? Anyway, I did well in this talent show, which wasn't great because this other girl, who was actually a very close friend of mine, wasn't really happy that like there was a winner of the talent show and a runner-up, and she wasn't one of the winners, and she didn't like that. So anyway, long story short, before it was even cool, like in Mean Girls, they have a burn book. That movie had not been out yet, but she created something similar, which was a note, but it was like a burn, where she wrote a letter that was supposedly from me, and she
Oh,
talked crap about like 11 people in the grade. And she planted this note on the top of the lockers, and somebody found it, and that was exactly her plan. They're like, oh my God, Cathy Heller wrote this note, and she said this about this person and this about that person. And in the end, it's really interesting. I have horrible handwriting, which like really bad handwriting. So my handwriting was always like illegible. And in the end, I was able to prove that like it's not my handwriting, but it didn't matter because
Mm.
they were already like convinced. And everybody always, in order to bring people together, they just need a good enemy. So they made me the enemy. They didn't want me high on my horse from having just won this talent show. It was a week after. Talk about an upper limit. I probably co-created that because I was having this moment of power. And when I say power, I mean feeling in my own power, right? Feeling
Mm.
expressed. And there
Mm.
it was like, oh, see, don't be visible because people will come for you. And we had a substitute teacher in first hour the next day after this note. And I walk in and everybody moved their desk to the perimeter of the room. So what was left in the middle of the room was just my desk. And the substitute had no control over the classroom. And I went to Officer Gennady, who worked at our school, and I was like, they're saying they're going to beat me up. I don't know what I'm going to do. And he called all these girls, Devin Macarone and Jennifer Starkweather, and all these girls into his office. And he was like, if anybody touches her, even off campus, it's now a campus issue. You will become expelled. Da, 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 da. And they said,
Oh
look
my
at
God.
this note. And he was like, prove the note, show the note. And finally they found the note. And he's like, look at her handwriting. Does this even look like her handwriting? Anyway, it didn't matter. They hated me. And for the rest of the year, they left me alone, but nobody sat with me at lunch. And so I used to go to the front office and feel really bad about myself. And I would search for like boarding schools and ask my parents if I could go be sent away. And of course, they were going through a divorce. They had no money for that. And I made friends with the administration and the secretaries, and I hung out there and I would say, can I file for you? Can I hang out in here? So that was horrible. And then I made it through that year. And then long story short, ninth grade, I was so relieved because I went to a new school. I went to high school and there were like
Mm.
4 schools that fed into high school. And I was like, oh my God, I'm safe. I'm done. And I made new friends and I was starting to feel okay. And then one time in geometry class in 10th grade, 3 years later, we had a substitute. And this kid in the back of the room, Carl Rubin, said, does everyone remember when Cathy Heller was a loser in 7th grade? And I was like, oh my God, it's followed me. Oh my God, it's here. So anyway,
Wow.
but on top of all of that, what's
Wow.
really the story is that when my father left and my mom was devastated to learn that he was having an affair, of course, she was devastated. She was not able to take care of herself or anyone else at that point, and she completely and totally fell into a depression and tried to take her own life. And one
Mhm.
night, she attempted suicide, and I said to her, "You cannot do this." And I tried to give her every good, encouraging word, and she was really not able to hear me. She had lost so much weight; she was in such a horrible state, and I said to her, what about me? Like, what will I do? Like, how will I, like, you know,
Oh my
and my
God.
sister had gone off to college and it was just she and I. And she said, you're not enough. She literally said to me, I cannot live for you. It's not enough. You're not enough. I have to have something to live for that's inside of me. And I will tell you that everyone I've ever coached or met, or any woman or any friend of mine struggles with, I'm not enough.
Yeah.
But on the nose, like she literally said that to me.
That's insane.
And it actually is the beginning of the rest of my life, which actually gave me any superpowers that I have, because it helps you to rise like a phoenix when you have the very thing that you fear the most, which is your own mother telling you, really what the saddest part is that she doesn't have enough to live for, right? Because at the end of the day, the greatest leaders, teachers, parents, role models show us our pointers for how much is possible and how much they see in us. But if a person doesn't want to wake up another day and
Mm.
doesn't believe that there is enough even for them and you're not even enough, that is truly it's like the complete and total absence of hope.
Yeah.
And I went through a really dark time for a while in high school, but then turned to books and spiritual books and started to see things in a completely different way. And I never would have studied what I studied in college, and I never would have gone to Jerusalem if I had like the two great parents and the cats in the yard and the little house with the red door. Like there's something about it that's actually perfect the way that it was. And, you know, that's really a look at my seventh grade self. And I was not, I just was not comfortable in my own skin. I often say that I think I'm only now ready to go to seventh grade. Like I have emotional,
Would that not be the best
my
experience?
God, so different.
Oh my goodness. I love that you said rise like a phoenix. That's my son's name, my first son. Kathy, you just always make me cry, and it's so interesting that you've become the antidote to, I do believe that it's like we are here to become the hero, the heroine that would have saved us. I love that you've become the woman that would have saved you in those moments.
So beautiful. That is
A-
fascinating.
And I love that, like, that's become your mission. I don't know if you say this or not, but like what I see is it's become your mission to save your mom, to save those women that like wouldn't get out of bed. Like these women that, millions of people that are listening, including men, my dad, my husband, my breathwork facilitator, they all listen to your podcast. It's like the way I have to say that you have changed my life. And it's not that I'm so depressed I can't get out of bed, but yes, like we all have those days where it is hard.
Yeah.
And I will put your podcast in my ear, and the vibration of what you bring with your heart and your knowing and your spirituality, that will bring me into my wholeness. And
That's such an incredible gift to even hear that. And yeah, and we all have those days for sure. And we all have the greater the light, the greater the shadow. That's like the law of science. So the bigger something is in the sun, the larger the shadow.
yeah,
So of course, all of us have an equal shadow. And the larger your light can be, I can be so lit and so in flow state and so completely and totally just surrendered that when I hit my shadow side, it's just extremely uncomfortable and dark, right? It's the other side of that.
yeah,
Um, and it feels insane, because I'm like, what is this warped world that I have just entered? What perceiving am I doing right now? How am I even feeling and seeing and thinking this way? And I'm also a Gemini, so I'm very like different pieces
yes,
of
yes.
myself, and I'm never in the middle. I'm always all in or not at all. So it's very interesting. And yes, I think it's just really kind to hear that what I'm doing can give you that lift, but I definitely relate to having those days and looking to things that just the vibration alone, just the way the person embodies their energy is enough to say, okay, I just located myself again, right? It doesn't even really matter what you said, it's kind of how you said what you said.
Yeah. Yeah, so your book, Abundant Ever After, this is going to air in December when it's coming out.
I'm going to show it to you.
Tell us about what you want this book to do for people.
Well, I want this book
So
to,
pretty.
it's so pretty.
So pretty.
It's so pretty. We went through so many iterations of that cover. I want this book to be the skeleton key
Yeah.
that unlocks a ease and a joy and a vibrant resonance inside of all of us. I think that this book is a collection of my ideas and the ideas that I have collected over the course of my life that have helped me to fully find my way back to the stream, to the wholeness that always is a breath away. It's always a thought away. It's always here. And I think that because we also put tools and exercises into the book where we're like, okay, you're going to read this and then close your eyes and remember just this one line. I think that since words don't really do a great job of teaching, but experience does, I think that the words that then lead to the exercises will hopefully help people have a lived experience of this work. But essentially, the book is called Tools for Abundant Ever After, Tools for Creating a Life of Prosperity and Ease. And I think ultimately those words are important because there is a part of us that knows that we want a bounty, we want plenty, we want prosperity in all ways. We want to feel prosperous and abundant. And we also want ease. And the good news is that is actually how it's designed. It's designed that when we let go of trying to figure it out, when we let go of everything other than focusing on the vibration that we cast, that is the magnet. And so it's actually designed, just like we said, when a person goes into a higher state of consciousness, their biology reflects that on an fMRI or on a cellular level with a blood test, which is amazing, or on a blood pressure, like on every level. So too, when we focus on not what do we need to do, but who do we need to be, and our vibration is palpable because the most loving person in the room is the most impressive. The most joyful is the most contagious. The most relaxed is the most powerful, right?
Yeah.
So when we come into those places of resonance, we remember that is how the universe actually is designed, that everything was already created to move into wholeness. Every garden knows how to find its equilibrium. It knows what to do, and it knows what to do with us as long as we are in alignment. When we're not in alignment, it's hard for us to find our way to what is our source of energy. But when we are, just like the sun will light up the trees and they will metabolize that energy, all of the most gorgeous gifts will come through synchronicity. And the synchronicity will find us when we are in alignment and at ease and in our wholeness. And there's no reason to struggle. But we've been sold that the more struggle, the more success and prosperity. But that's actually only one idea of how to get there. And I don't think there's any getting there if the path itself is a struggle, because the path is the outcome, right? So the path being
Yes, the
ease,
process has to be fun.
that's because our whole life is in that process. It's living in that process. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so you were talking about Siddhartha and Moses and right, like, okay, they had everything and they wanted to give it all
Yeah.
up. And then, so for you, what's so interesting and about your book, right, is like that you understand these truths and you're so spiritual and tapped in, but then also you have this gorgeous, luxurious, abundant, physically abundant life, right? On that level. So
Yeah.
you marry these two worlds and you give us an example of, I can be this person, this spiritual, tapped in, tuned in, turned on person who's like with all of the spiritual juju, and also I can be this person who's like enjoying Hollywood and enjoying, fancy lunches. And so I'm curious, like, what, I know we don't have like all day, but like what bridged those for you? And is that's part of the work you're bringing to us, right? Is like how to
Yeah, I
bridge.
love, first of all, I just love the question and I love how you ask questions. You're so good at this. You are. The truth, as far as I see it, is, and you've heard me say this too, but you can have anything you want as long as you give up the belief that you can't have it. And thoughts turn into things. So as Abraham Hicks would say, you can create a button or a castle. It's up to you. It's what your thoughts produce, right? So you can focus on a button and you'll create a button. A button will come into your life, or you can focus on a castle and a castle will come into your life. That's really how easy it is. Like when Jim Carrey said that he sat on the top of Mulholland and looked out at the lights in the valley in LA and wrote himself a check for $10 million and said, I will one day cash this check. And so it is, because he completely and totally was in alignment with the moon and the sun and the stars being completely and totally abundant and completely and totally allowing that into his life. There was no other way it would go because it just was. So what allowed me to allow that in and allow my thoughts to fully and coherently say, I want all of these things on the buffet, was King David, I think, because studying King David, this is the man who wrote all the Psalms. You know, we sing that Hallelujah song and the pentatonics do it so well. Like these are like deeply spiritual prayers. And in the scope of history, human civilization as we know it, he had more money than Steve Jobs and Kim Kardashian. I mean, he ran an empire, right? This is a different level of wealth. You know, he didn't have a house in Bel Air. He was the king of a kingdom, right? Who was that spiritual, that connected to God, that his Psalms, as I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, like that is his work, right? There's hundreds of them. I think we only have 100 and something of them. Like this man just like prayed his guts out and had all of this material wealth. And why? Because the idea of the middle path is to yoke, the yoga is to yoke the physical and the image and the non-physical. So the idea is that we are a steward in this life. And the idea is that our job is to elevate things that are physical and imbue them with consciousness, right? So the more the merrier, right? Like if you can imbue something with consciousness, why would you only do that with a thimble when you could do it with the ocean, right? So it's available. It's available. And there's so much disruption and static and shame around material wealth that literally creates inside of people a resistance to it, where they will say on one hand, oh, I would love to be prosperous, but on another hand, they feel deep shame.
Mm-hmm.
And they wouldn't say that out loud, when really that is ridiculous, because the reason you would think that is because you think people would judge you for having it. And if you think people would judge you for having it, then they're basically in scarcity mindset. And they're believing that by you having it, by definition, they have less.
Yeah.
That is completely contrary to living in an abundant world. This world is so abundant. And it's the opposite. Abundance creates abundance. As you've heard me say, one candle lights an unlimited amount of candles and doesn't lose its own flame, not one drop. The abundance of one light can make an unlimited amount of other lights. And so when you become abundant, you just create a pathway for other people to see a possibility, to think a new thought and turn that thought into more things. So it is only the opposite. So to get caught up and not feel that you can receive anything that you desire to receive is not really coming from abundance consciousness. It's coming from scarcity mindset. And, you know, I've shared this with you also, but when people want to be physically healthy, they don't settle for having a headache 10% of every day. They have a standard of saying, I want to feel physically good all day. I don't want a stomach ache. I don't want to feel a little bit crappy all day. I want to feel really good all day, every day.
Mm-hmm.
Why would you not want to feel that way in every aspect of your life? Why wouldn't you want to feel that you have a wealth of abundance, not just on a physical level, but financially? Like, why would you not want to be a steward for more good to come and flow through you into the world? It doesn't make sense unless you're getting bought into people's scarcity mindset. But as we know, you know, the dreamers of this world, whether it was Dr. King or JFK or Joan of Arc, they have a vision. And their vision is one that includes everyone, meaning to say, this dream is big enough for you to have it too. So that's the American dream, like that, the idea being abundance vision. If everyone plugs in, they can also create it for themselves. So every time somebody becomes abundant in love, with wealth, they become a possibility for somebody else.
Yeah, it's like you say the game is like how good can you stand it? The expanding our capacity to feel good. So much I want to talk to you about, Cathy, but here's the thing is you also find time with all that you give to be 100% there as best you can for your children. And then you're volunteering at the school, and then you're doing like the soup kitchen or whatever. It's incredible. You're such an inspiration, Cathy. And it's just incredible. I really, truly like want everyone that I know to dip into your world as often as possible. It's just been such a life changer for me. Just being able to expand my capacity to feel good, bringing me back to like the true self that I am. Like the always having fun, silly, like you say, there's no serious panda bear. It's just like, why not have fun and like enjoy the
Right?
process and just and more is more and
Yeah,
and you get to be spiritual and you get to be with your kids. I
totally. I
just,
mean,
you're
we're
such an
here.
example.
You're so kind. I mean, we're here for such a blip, in the physical body that we have in this one iteration of us. It's such a blip. It's like, why would we waste time, judging ourselves or other people? So, it's awesome and kind and generous when you reflect back to me, the things that you feel like I model, and I'm able to be with my kids and be spiritual and run a business and enjoy it. And I think, first of all, I have plenty of moments in my life where I'm not getting it right, in so many different ways. And at the same time, I think what I am doing, which is helping me to allow for all these things to be flowing, is I don't spend a lot of time wasting time in the worry, right? Like a lot of bandwidth I get back because I'm not in it for that. Meaning to say, if we're launching a book and the book doesn't hit the bestseller list, okay, like I wasn't worried about it. It's kind of like I wrote a book. I hope that the right human who's supposed to read it will read it. And if that one girl lives in London and she found it, I'm so glad I wrote it. So there's a lot of bandwidth, I feel like, that people put around achievement
Yeah.
or feeling rejected. And that, I don't have that. I released that. I think when you have a mother who says the ultimate rejection to you, and you find your way to take your next breath, you made a choice to fully release that and totally let that go. So I've reoriented myself with where my wholeness comes from, and it doesn't come from outside of me. And so I'm the one who's like, wow, my body's feeling tense right now. I'm doing that to myself. What can I unhook from to give myself more ease? I'm going to
Yeah.
let that go. I'm going to shut that tab. I'm not going to work on that anymore. Like, at the end of the day, nobody gets the award for most depleted or most exhausted. You get to give yourself the best day you can. And when you just turn back into the wholeness within and say, I'm going to just enjoy this as much as I can today and find ease and find playfulness and find synchronicity. And then I'm going to love people into life. I'm going to smile more. I'm going to reach out and, to give a stranger something. You wind up having the best day. And then you realize there's nothing you need.
Yeah.
There's really nothing. You don't need more stuff. You can always downsize and live in a little hut on a beach and like just have the best day. Like, who cares? So you realize like there's really not much, except the fact that I will say life can be really painful. My dad passed away in the summer. Painful things happen, but I feel like all those painful things are also like an initiation. I feel like we go through these painful things and they just like walk us into more wisdom, and pain is like so powerful.
The
I
best
can't wish it on
teacher. Yeah.
anyone, but at my dad's funeral, like I didn't want it to end because there was something so
Yeah.
just unbelievably deep, and there's a deep heart-centeredness that comes through when you feel that cracked open and sad. It's there.
You can't worry about anything. You're just so in the
Yeah, but there's
moment.
almost a word for it that's not a happiness, but it's almost like in the moments when you're that sad. Well, for instance, grief like that feels like love. It feels like your heart is being shattered from love itself. But there's just something, I guess, about really painful things that bring you back to why you're here and what matters in a way that is a satisfying feeling, to be that connected with what matters most, that it's hard
Yeah.
to explain it, but when you're in these really sad moments,
Like a distillation of what truth is.
like sitting with my dad in hospice was so painful, and at the same time some of the most meaningful, beautiful moments in my life. So I'm not exactly sure how to articulate what that feeling is, but what I am saying, and the reason I brought it up, is because no matter how much you focus your attention and point your attention towards what is your business, which is all the right things to be focused on, you can't escape that life itself will sometimes call you into pain.
Yeah.
And so pain is inevitable, but suffering is optional. And
Right.
how we choose to metabolize and deal with pain is it's our rite of passage. So,
You guys have to listen to Kathy's episode about her dad because
oh,
yeah, it's incredible. How, okay, just personal question for me, like how are you doing now about your dad?
I'm doing okay. I I have three big photos of him on my fridge, and I wear this bracelet, this one that he wore, and I had it cut down to size because it was obviously bigger on him. And I feel him with me. And I have moments where I feel like, oh, it's so final. Like there's no more, moments. But I have this cool thing recently where I'll say to him before I go to sleep, I want you to come into my dream and visit me. And then he will. And
Oh
I
my
think that
God.
that's cool. And I think it's also like sometimes there's really healthy regret. And I think I
Hmm.
have healthy regret around wanting to go back and open my heart more and receive more from him. And, he would text me all the time how proud he was of me and how much he loved me. And I would say, I know, thank you. But like, there was so much love that I could have like really let in. And when you go back and think, no matter how complex your parents are, it's very unique the way your parents feel about you. And it's a gift while they're here to receive what it is they're trying to give you.
And also our husbands. Because we have to let their love in. I know you have that too. And it's like, I know both of our husbands love us so much. And I've heard you talk about like that upper limit. And I feel that too. I'm like, oh, if I could only just let him love me the way he loves me, that would be everything.
Totally. Last night, my husband's like, let's go on a date outside in the backyard. And he like filled up like two water bottles and like brought the food that we were eating fish tacos. He brought them outside. And at first I was like, oh my God, we're gonna go sit outside. And it's like 8:30 and I want to put my daughter to bed. And I was like, I'll just go. And it was so nice. Like normally when we're outside in the evening at that hour, it's only if we're hosting some event. Like we usually don't go sit outside at 8:30. And we looked at the stars, and then my kids were so happy that we were outside that they came outside. And I said to him, that was so nice. He's like, see, we didn't have to go out on a date. You could just join me outside for a glass of water. It was so sweet. So I'm getting better at that, but definitely, definitely been, something that was hard for me to receive or to like just allow in. So I love that you're so generous and mention that about yourself, because it's a whole thing.
Thank you, Kathy. I could talk to you for the rest of my
I
life.
love
If you
talking to
let
you,
me,
and I
I would
love
just
the
talk
way
to you
you
forever.
lead. I love the way you lead a podcast. I love your lovingness, but I also love the way you synthesize questions and get
Well,
to like.
I learn from the best.
And I also love it's so sweet. And I also love how you tap back into like the essence by saying like tell me about you in seventh grade. I think that's such a smart, great question because I think you can ask people a lot of questions about whatever the heck it is that they're like working on right now.
Yeah.
I feel like we all have inside of us a whole world that sometimes doesn't get seen. And so I appreciate that you shared that with me.
Thank you. Well, you're so authentic that you share everything. You're such an open book that it just allows us to all heal.
How are
So thank you.
you?
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for everything. I love you so much. And I can't wait for your book to come out. I can't wait to share it with everyone and for you guys to all read it. And we know that we can go to Cathy.Heller at Cathy.Heller on Instagram
You can go
to
to
get
Cathy
in.
Heller, go to Cathy on Instagram, or you can go to cathyheller.com/book and you can get the book and then you can get bonuses like sample chapters and a manifestation journal and some affirmations that we send you, which is just fun.
Awesome. Well, you guys, if you have questions, you can ask me too. I have so much experience with Cathy, so feel free to ask me. And I'm gonna let you go. Bye.
Great job, Siri.